Good morning, everybody. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be discussing the very last lesson of statistics. It's called Probability in Society. Now, a lot of you may know about this lesson because what we're going to be discussing in today's lesson is the mode, the median, and the mean. And so, like I said, most of you may have already heard these terms, but we do cover them again in grade 9. And for those of you that haven't, that's okay. I'll explain it. We also will be discussing what we call a biased sample. So we're going to start off with that. So a biased sample simply means that you are receiving information from a sample that does not represent what the population believes, and it really makes your survey screwed up in terms of results. It makes it inaccurate, okay? So you have to be very careful if you ever do receive a biased sample. An example of this would be if you have a question and all you do is ask your friends for their answers. That could be a biased sample because your friends will more likely have the same opinion as yourself. And if that is the case, then, like I said, that could be very much considered a biased sample, because if your friends and you are the only ones who think in that respect, that's fine, but it doesn't represent what the population thinks, which the population might be our class or grade 9s, etc., etc. So we're going to go to example number 1. Ruth wants to determine the most common eye color of students. All grade 12 students in 5 of 7 high schools in a city recorded their eye color. A total of 2,300 students were surveyed, and the results were shown in the table. The table that we have is the table right in front of us. Brown was very, very common. It took over 16,000 answers. Blue was next up in line, and then green, and then other. And other can be sometimes, I've heard of people say they have gray eyes. Some people say hazel. It all depends on kind of how you interpret the color. Anyways, so from the results, predict how many of 7,200 students at the local college will have brown eyes. Show your thinking. So what's happening is in the city, there's a local college as well as 7 high schools. And Ruth wants to see if we can predict how many of those 7,200 students will also have brown eyes, given the results that we received from the 5 high schools. So just to start with that, first things first is we need to figure out what percentage of the 5 high schools did brown represent. So we do 1,656, and we divide it by the total number, and then we're going to times that by 100, and that will give us a total of 72%. So that means that this number right here represents 72% of the total number of people that answered. Now, brown is a very common color of eye, and the reason for that is because it has a very dominant gene. And what that means is your body's made up of a bunch of genes, G-E-N-E, not J-E-A-N. That's what you wear. And these genes are either considered recessive or dominant. And dominant means that they're very strong. Recessive means that they're weaker. And so when two people get together and have a child, the parents give their genes to this child. And whatever gene is the more dominant one, that's what the child ends up with. If the child has 2 weaker genes, let's say both parents have blue eyes, then they're going to give the recessive gene, the weaker gene of blue eyes, and then basically the child is not going to have to, the body is not going to have to fight with the genes to figure out who's going to win the fight, because they're both weaker, they're both recessive. So therefore the child is most likely going to end up with blue. I can't say for sure if that's a guarantee they end up with blue. I don't feel comfortable enough with the science part of that, but I'm pretty sure that the chances are extremely high to end up with blue eyes because you have those recessive genes. Versus if one parent had brown, one parent had blue, the chances are very likely that the child will end up with brown eyes because that's a stronger or a dominant gene. So show your thinking just simply means to, justify your answer, show your math. So we showed that. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to take, this is the total right here. And so that's this right here. And so we are going to take this percentage and we're going to divide it by 100 because we never work with a percentage. Here you go, 72 divided by 100 in brackets. And then we're going to times it by the total number of students in that college. Because what's going to happen here is I'm going to figure out what is 72% of 7,200 students. And when I do that, the total number becomes 5,184 students. Now be very careful. If by chance you happened to get a decimal as a number, you can't have half a student or a decimal of a student. So therefore, you would have to round up in this case. Okay, so we have 5,184 students will have brown eyes. Now, the next question is the most famous type of question. Is your prediction reasonable? Explain why or why not. So explain, you guys know, means to use your words. Now, why would our prediction not be reasonable? That's what we're going to discuss here. No, not necessarily, because we are assuming that the sample of students at the high school represent the college population. So what we're doing is we are saying that the colleges will have the same type of population. So what do I mean by that is if you look at certain cultures, it's more predominant for people to have specific eye colors, all depending on the types of genes that they have. And so often what will happen is certain parts of the world will have more will be more often a specific color. And when those parents get together, or when those people get together to become parents, they pass on those same kinds of genes to other people. So we have to be very careful. A high school and a college do not necessarily show the same population, okay? People can come from all over the world to go to a college here. So therefore you have to, the chances of them coming from all over the world to go to the high school, not as likely. Okay, so you have to be careful because no, we can't actually say this is an accurate, this is a reasonable prediction because of that reason. So, however, the college often has many come from other parts who come from other parts of the province or provinces or other countries. And that's what we were discussing here, okay? So, example could be biased, and the prediction may not be valid for the college population. So I'm not saying it's not right to do it. It's just you have to understand that your prediction may not be reasonable. It might be inaccurate for specific reasons. Okay? All right. So moving on to example number 2 now. Oops, just fixing this up. A false prediction. So a false prediction and reasonable predictions are not the same thing necessarily. There can be two different things. With reasonable, it just simply means that you made the prediction, but it could be inaccurate. False prediction, it means that you're not understanding how to make a proper prediction like using all of the entire information that you have received. I'll show you what I mean by that. So Mr. Kreutz gave an assignment worth 30 marks. After marking the first 5 papers, he was concerned that students did not understand the assignment. He predicted most students will not do well. So that's 5 papers. Now, they don't exactly say yet how many students he had, but we're going to figure that out in a sec. So find the mean, median, and mode for Mr. Kuntz's samples. Now the on 30, that's not our concern. What our concern is the numerator, the 20, the 15, the 18, 19, and 18. And based on those stats, predict the average mark for the assignment as a percent. So first things first here, we want to take these numbers and put them in numerical order. So 15, 18, 18, 19, 20. Okay. Now the reason we do that is because this will allow us to find the median, and the mode very quickly. And for the mean is the average. So that is what we have to do. We have to add all these together to find the mean. Okay. So the mode, that is the one that is shown the most amount of times. So if a number shows up 3 times and that is the highest, then that's the mode. If there are 2 numbers that show up 3 times and those are the highest numbers, then they're both the mode. So in this case here, 18 shows up twice, everything else shows up once. So 18 would be your mode. Now for your median, what you have to do is you have to go and find the middle of all the numbers. So if you start at both ends, okay, and then you move your finger in one, move your finger in one. And then wherever your fingers meet, that's where you have to say is your median. They both meet at this number 18 here. That would be my median. And they can repeat, as in 18 can be median, mode, and mean. It can be different numbers. It can be all the same. It doesn't matter. So then for your mean, that's like your average. What we're going to do is we're going to take all these marks here, we're going to add them together, and we're going to divide them by 5. And the reason we divide them by 5 is because there's 5 tests. Okay? So 15 plus 18 plus 18 plus 19 plus 20, and you divide it by 5 because there's 5 tests, equals, and we're not trying to figure out the percentage, we just want to know what is the average mark, which is the mean. Therefore, the mean ends up being 18 as well. So let's now go to the second page here. And let's figure out why this was a false prediction. So here are all the scores. Calculate the mean, median, and mode for the class population. So as you can see now, we have a total of 30 tests. So there were 30 students. So putting this all into numerical order to start, get going on that. So 13, 15, 15, 16, 17, there are 2, 19s, like I put 200, 121, there are 323. Now, I'll have to move under this to make sure that we stay on the paper here. 624. Oops. Oh my. I said 5. I wrote a 5. 25. 127. 20. And 30. So we put it in numerical order. Now we're going to be easily able to find the median and the mode. So the median and the mode, let's start with the mode here. 24, it shows up 6 times. That's an automatic win. So my mode is 24. Now my median, we have to go at the opposite ends, and we go in 1 for each time. 1, 1. 1, 1. Yep. That might be another way. Sorry, I'm around the camera here. 1, 1, 1. Okay, and here and this and 1. So I'm actually stuck. I'm stuck in between two of them.